And the main topic there, when those two get together, trade, auto tariffs on Europe and that kind of thing that's been talked about. I'm sure it'll come up in that meeting. So let's bring in from the Fox Business Network, Susan Li, and we have a couple of market watchers with us. Rebecca Walser joins us, as well as Will Rhind. So good to see everybody involved. Susan, I'll start with you on these big issues. China trade is kind of out there. I feel like these auto tariffs kind of snuck up on us with the president bringing it up, and I'm sure the Austrian chancellor, you don't think of Austria with cars, but just in general, Europe and the U.S., that'll be a big topic
today. That's right. So, I take it as the president is trying to remake the entire trade landscape, not just with China. I mean, those are big trade talks that are ongoing this week in D.C., but also with the European Union and auto tariffs, and also Japan and South Korea, because those are the main international auto importers here to the U.S. So if he does take up the tariffs, I mean, he's going to have a few renegotiations with those that he already has deals with, mind you.
I wonder how serious he is. We always wonder that, by the way, Will, on this particular issue, because there's not a lot of support. And that hasn't necessarily stopped this president in the past. But even here, I mentioned last hour, you would think, hey, U.S. automakers would be in favor of this, and they're really not. So.
Yeah, and the relevance to the Austrians is that they're a large car part manufacturer and supplier to the German market. So,
right, and sometimes people forget how complicated making or building, manufacturing a car really is. Parts come from all over the place. But
exactly, and a lot of these cars are manufactured in Eastern Europe, so any potential tariffs affecting the German market also, by definition, impacts other countries such as Hungary and Austria and Slovakia, other places where there are a lot of parts and industry that supports the German industry.
It's interesting, Rebecca, that the president throws this wrench into things when all the reports out there are that we're actually making progress with China. So how are the two related, and what type of progress, the way you read it, do you think we are actually making with China? How close to a deal?
Well, I wish I could say I think we're closer. I do think that China does, the U.S. wants structural change. We want them to stop really sort of unmaking the playing field not fair by obviously spending a ton of government money, Chinese money, in private sectors, like Huawei is the perfect example. So I don't think that is what I understand a non-starter from China's perspective. So that's a big problem.
This whole idea of structural change, you think about it, Will, I mean, that seems, just logically speaking, like something that would take a long time. Now, to be fair to the president, he's basically telegraphed the fact that this March 1st date doesn't really mean anything, and now we're assuming, maybe incorrectly, but we're assuming that's going to be extended, right?
I think that's right, and as you guess, just said there, that I think some of the trade articles that we're talking about are more of the easy ones to do.
Think he'll do it piecemeal, maybe, like piece by piece, or kind of let it play out until we can get some sort of a big deal?
I think it's difficult to say at this stage, but the bigger concern, certainly the more structural things, the intellectual property, the national security concerns, those things are just much harder to address than the immediate tariffs on particular items, whatever they may be.
Yeah, and me and Will were having a conversation about this in the green room.
Bring me in on
it. Okay, well, we were talking about China trade, and I was surprised by the outsized reaction by the markets to these trade disputes, right? Because if you look at it from a macro perspective, U.S.-China trade accounts for 1% of global trade. Yes, I guess significant. It's not insignificant, and we'll say that, but it's not a huge number. And U.S. companies, they make around 12 to 15% of, they get 12 to 15% of their revenues from the Chinese market. So why were, markets on edge and really parsing through every detail that comes through? And why were we down 20% in bear market over concerns about
overreaction, but it only grows over time, right? I mean, China's already number 2 economy-wise, only gets bigger over time.
But you didn't wait for my conclusion.
Oh, there's a bigger and a larger point.
So there we go. The unveiling with the curtain is that I think it probably has a bigger impact on the Chinese market. And as you know, it's the second largest economy in the world. And so I think that probably has more of a global effect than, say, on the U.S. itself.
So that's the debate, Rebecca, whether the Chinese have more of a motivation to get this whole thing done maybe than we do. And, it depends who you talk to. But as Susan said, their economy's been hit hard. There's no doubt it's slowing down. It's just a matter of whether it's slowing down enough to motivate them to act quickly, cut a deal more quickly. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think President Xi at first thought that he could probably maybe even sort of outlast President Trump. But with the actual impact, we see the slowest development and growth from China in years from last year. So, and obviously the global economic slowdown in the EU as well. It's a global slowdown. And I think China is saying, oh, gosh, I guess I have to come to the table and negotiate.
Now, for months now in the markets, it seems like we've only been talking about two things. It's either China or it's the Fed. So, Will, I'll go to you on this first. Get into the Fed today with the minutes coming out a little under an hour from now, 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'll point out it's a little different today because it's snowing down in D.C. The federal government closes down it doesn't take much. But
I'll definitely be out by 2 p.m.
And I guess
definitely.
the only reason I mentioned that, we'll get them. We usually, media-wise, get a little chance to look them over beforehand, put them in perspective. So it might take us an extra second today because we're only getting them on time as opposed to ahead of time. These minutes, a lot of times, Neil used to make the joke. He's like, oh, man, the Fed minutes are coming out, and I got this old suit on.
So exciting,
no big
so
deal.
exciting.
So we kind of say, it's backward looking, not a big deal. I wonder if it is a bigger deal this time, though, because here's the Federal Reserve giving us a rationale of why it, depending on your perspective, either finally came on board or changed course. Or what do you think we'll hear today in these meetings or in these minutes?
I'm not sure there'll be too much new information. I think it's more...
I tried to build it up best I could. You know?
I think it's more kind of a question of what's happening, for the rest of the year.
Right.
And of course, we had this big climb down from multiple rate hikes this year to now most likely no rate hikes this year. If we see the economy improving, then potentially one. So that rhetoric's changed pretty dramatically, and of course, that's impacted.
I wonder
the
if
markets.
it's none or one, because Meester, one of the Fed presidents, recently said that she probably thinks there might be one in the bag. I'm not sure. I don't think the markets are pricing that in.
That is none, right, in market.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even a debate. I don't know what you guys think of it about whether the next move is a hike
or a cut.
Yes. What do you think, Will? And I'll go to Rebecca on this too. What do you think's the next move?
Well, I think for a cut, there has to be a pretty big slowdown. We knew coming to this year that economic growth was slowing, but I think something has to deteriorate.
And you don't really see that, right?
Not at this stage, I think.
What do you think, Rebecca? Because you bring up a good point. Will brings up a good point. It's almost like we should be rooting for a rate hike, right? Because if we do see higher rates, it's for a good reason. It means the economy is actually doing, even better than we thought.
Yeah, if we are talking about a cut, then we're all going to be very depressed on this show, that's for sure. I expect that the minutes are going to show the rationale of global slowdown as the reason for the pause, and I hope we have a roaring economy this year so we can actually get another rate hike. We need it. 2.25% is not anything the Fed can work with if we need monetary policy to help us from some sort of market route. So we need some normalization, in my opinion. I guess
I'd be curious to see, Susan, how much, and maybe this is kind of hoping for too much from the Federal Reserve, but how much discussion there was internally about, hey, what should we do? I think that things are slowing down versus, I wonder how much debate they were really having.
Lots. And they probably wonder what the president was thinking as well.
That's almost definitely not
given what's happened now in the last year. But I would say that right now, the economy, are we growing at 3%? I mean, those December retail numbers are really scary because they're the worst growth we've seen in 10
some
years.
Think it's one-off, or...
However, having said that, the New York Fed yesterday came out with a survey that showed the consumers here in the U.S. will spend more this year compared to last year. And as you know, that's 2/3 of the U.S. economy right there. Yeah,
make a last point, Will, on the consumer, because Susan's right. There's this debate now about whether those retail sales numbers were really the state that we're in, or maybe the New York Fed is right. We're going to spend more than we did.
I think providing that the economy continues to grow and people experience real wage growth and feel richer, I think that spending can certainly increase from here.
You feel richer? He's not going to answer that. Thank you, Will. Good to see you. Susan does.
I thought you were going to ask him for his bank account or something.
Well, it's just a question. He said, does he feel richer? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Now, as we move